And she said that, over the, a few years, that Diddy introduced her to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse that required her to procure illicit prescriptions to satisfy his own addictions. She said Diddy would have other in the open like candy, and at first Cassie was given prescriptions that he had gotten from his doctor in Miami, but eventually he demanded that she would get her own prescriptions in her own name and then give those to him. Do you know about this?
A startling turn has emerged in the breaking news about Diddy's legal issues. In his Brooklyn prison cell at the Metropolitan Prison Center, the FBI reportedly discovered surprising items. These findings might significantly alter the direction of his prosecution and raise new questions about the extent of his alleged behavior.
Filed not only against the defendant, but also against the person who is his friend or supporter who does threaten a witness. And that was the case in the art criminal case as well.
In a third attempt to get out of jail and tell his trial, Combs is again offering a $50 million bond and promising strict home detention. His attorneys writing in a brief to a federal judge, quote, sensationalism surrounding his arrest has distorted bail analysis. Combs is due back.
The FBI reportedly found illegal drugs hidden in Diddy's medicine bag inside his jail cell. This result might have a significant influence on his case, adding to the serious charges of trafficking and racketeering he already faces. The finding of illegal drugs in his cell raises more questions about his behavior while inside.
Medicine bag would be everything that he need, all the Sierras, everything was in this medical bag right here. So, sometime I would get it and look at it and be like, what the fuck is all for? But he definitely had some doctors in Miami that would write whatever you wanted. And it wouldn't all be in his name. It would be in his assistant's name and anybody else that was around him.
Did you ever take yourself?
I actually did.
Okay.
I actually did.
Keep it honest, all right.
No, I'm going to keep it all the way honest. It was times where I was up 24 hours, 48 hours. And when you're around this type of situation, you try it. And I actually did try it. I took ecstasy at that time. And I found myself kind of staying up because of this. You know what I'm saying? And I had to get away from that. And I just stopped taking it. I wasn't hooked or nothing like that.
After the FBI's removal of illicit drugs from Diddy's prison cell, the music mogul is reportedly now suffering from severe withdrawal symptoms. According to sources at the Metropolitan Detention Center, he has been in excruciating physical and mental pain ever since he lost access to the medication.
Reportedly been going through withdrawal symptoms since being incarcerated. I'm Dr. Frida, and here are 5 things to know about opioid withdrawal syndrome. 1. Opioids are medications or drugs that include fentanyl, Percocet, OxyContin, heroin, morphine. 2. Opioid withdrawal syndrome, life-threatening. It can start as early as 4 hours after the last use of an opioid, but typically peaks at 48 to 72 hours after the last use. 3. Symptoms may include dilated pupils, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fast heart rate, high body temperature, tearing eyes, runny nose, goosebumps. 4. Treatment may include medications like methadone and anti-nausea and anti-diarrhea medicines. 5. If you suspect that you are going through opioid withdrawal, or if you just want to stop using opioids, consult your physician or an addiction.
Diddy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, has made startling claims that Diddy's drug use dates back years, especially to his relationship with the late Kim Porter. According to Deal, Diddy's addiction was maintained a secret inside his inner group, but it seems to have become worse when he started dating Porter. This admission demonstrates the extent of his addiction and offers further background on the recent discovery of illicit narcotics in his jail cell.
He had with Kim Porter?
Yeah, that's the same time, man. That's the reason I knew that shit was serious, because that's what got Puff hooked on drugs.
But for the people that don't know the story, right, let the people know what led to, Kim Porter slashing Puffy wrist with a corkscrew.
Right. I get a call. It's on a Saturday. And from Kirk Burroughs and Paul, they were like, yo, Gene, Puff is by himself over at St. Luke's Hospital. I was like, yo, what happened? You say, yo, They say, yo, Gene, you gotta get over there because ain't nobody, nobody there with him, blah, that, and the third. So I rush over to St. Luke's Hospital. I see Kim, they in the emergency room. Flash my badge, I go up in there. She was in distress herself, whereas that she could have been in pain, she could have been hurting. It's a lot of crazy been made. And you gotta look at that interview that Jonathan Odie did, bro. You know what I'm saying? That was probably more damaging than Cassie. And that was more damaging than Cassie, because check this out. He said Diddy was transporting liquid cocaine on his private jet. Now, the DEA wasn't involved in this. It was the FBI and the Homeland Security, basically. That's because of the sex trafficking thing. But if they find any of that stuff in any one of his houses, there's a problem. Even if they find illegal guns, the constitutional right goes the right to bear arms, but he had to have licenses for that shit. So if anybody got illegal guns up in there, if they find any kind of drugs to a high amount, cocaine and weed, I don't think Diddy gonna get charged, because what he did, he put everything in his kid's name.
In a previous interview, he openly admitted to using psychedelic substances, admitting to have tried things like mushrooms. He described these experiences as a means of enhancing his creativity and gaining personal awareness, framing his use of psychedelics as a tool for spiritual and artistic growth. These prior remarks, however, appear more concerning now that illicit substances have been discovered in his jail cell.
I tried anything once with an ambulance outside. And I had an ambulance outside, and I went through the best process. I would not advise it. You have to be in the wave of just like into looking for what's past here sometimes to be into psychedelics. But it's something that I wouldn't recommend unless, you know what I'm saying, you was using my man. So I would not advise it to anybody, but I could just speak on my experiences.
He continued by saying that while I underwent a careful process, I honestly wouldn't advise someone who attempts things with an ambulance on standby to do so. Psychedelics need a specific mindset. Not everyone is a good match. I wouldn't suggest it if you don't really understand what I'm saying. I personally accepted the risk, but I would never suggest it to others. I am limited to discussing my own experiences.
Even one time, I believe I went and picked up something in my name one time. You know what I'm saying?
Really? And then you gave it to Diddy?
And I just gave it to Diddy, yeah. But he would do that on the regular. So at that point, I thought it was because he was Diddy and just didn't want to go into CVS. But he had doctors that would just write him a prescription for whatever he wanted.
Do you think that Diddy at this time was
I know he was a junkie.
Roger Bond claims that Diddy often used his connections to get prescription medications, often relying on doctors to prescribe him everything he wanted. Bond further alleges that Diddy asked his ex-partner Cassie to regularly provide him with these narcotics, perhaps facilitating his habit without his awareness. His comments just add to the growing problem surrounding Diddy's alleged drug use.
Will stand trial in May on his sex trafficking charges. A judge at a hearing in Manhattan set the trial date, also discussing a gag order imposed on prosecutors and the defense, telling them not to discuss the case or provide any material to the media, to the public. They contend that the government leaked a damaging piece of evidence potentially against Combs when a videotape from 2016 was played on CNN earlier this year. That videos Sean Combs and his then girlfriend Cassie in a hotel in Los Angeles. It had been a secret, private for many years, but then it came to the forefront and was played publicly on CNN. The defense contends that that tape was leaked by investigators. Prosecutors say they have no knowledge of any, and they refute the allegation that they were involved in any leaks. The judge says he will consider potentially having an evidentiary hearing to get to the bottom of that. That won't happen for some time. First, the defense and then the prosecution will submit paperwork outlining.
As the allegations against Diddy continue to mount, Young Miami is now accused of giving Diddy pink cocaine, also known as 2CB, a potent synthetic hallucinogenic that has recently gained popularity in certain party situations. This latest discovery is adding intrigue to the controversy surrounding Diddy's alleged drug use.
He has been accused of transporting pink cocaine to Diddy in new court documents. Plaintiff and the Combs RICO enterprise were rehearsing for something in the Westival in Virginia. The court filing reads, Plaintiff Jones personally witnessed Mr. Combs do a few lines of coke in his dressing room. Defendant Sean Combs wanted Tussie, but Brendan forgot it. So defendant Christina Coram called Young Miami, who then brought it on the private jet from Miami. Young Miami, Jade, and Daphne Joy were paid a monthly fee to work as Mr. Combs' sex workers and receive payment via wire transfer. The nigga's so gay he can't even do regular coke. It gotta be pink. I bet y'all gonna ignore the part where it says Young Miami was hired as his sex worker. I see why you got the fuck on. I mean, after all, Young Miami did say I'll hold a brick for you, daddy. So is this a drug case or a sex case? This all makes sense why JT don't fuck with her. These stories.
Allegations suggest that Young Miami, who has been closely linked to Diddy, may have given him this substance throughout their relationship. If verified, these claims highlight Diddy's ongoing access to dangerous drugs and reveal a toxic relationship among his inner circle, further complicating his already contentious legal problems.
That several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy because that is a part of what happened here.
Wait a second, so Usher, Pink, Megan Fox, a bunch of other celebrities are scrubbing all their information off of X, every tweet they've ever done. Well, that's very interesting. That's a rabbit hole in itself. But listen to what AOC is saying right here. They're coming for your free speech, y'all.
We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something.
Diddy's infamous private parties have long been the subject of rumors and controversy, and new allegations suggest that drug use was a common feature of these upscale gatherings. Sources claim that Diddy often used a range of narcotics at his private parties, which were described as disorderly and unruly and included well-known attendees. Diddy is accused of openly taking drugs, as do other visitors. Diddy was recently arrested after being indicted by a grand jury on serious charges of trafficking, racketeering, and other offenses that reportedly spanned over a decade.
Combs has been denied bail in connection with the sexual abuse and sex trafficking charges he faces. And as Les Trent reports, the music mogul who once traveled by private jet to all those mansions is now in a jail that is notorious for its bad living conditions.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs spent his first night behind bars inside a facility that is being called Hell on Earth. The Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is notorious for its appalling living conditions and rampant violence. How bad is it inside this federal lockup? There have been 2 murders, 4 suicides, numerous stabbings, and lockdowns in recent years. It's so out of control inside that 4 federal judges are reportedly refusing to send any more prisoners here. Donald Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, spent a harrowing year in federal custody. He says for someone used to a life of luxury like Diddy, prison life is a severe shock.
You have a desk, you have a plastic chair, you have with a 1.5-inch mattress, no pillow, and you also have a locker. So you basically have 3 feet by 5 feet to move around. So you have a basic 15 square feet. It is a horrible, horrible place.
Lawyers were so eager to keep him out of jail, they offered his palatial $48 million home in Miami Beach and his private jets as bail. Today, they are even offering to restrict female visitors to his homes, except for his mother, daughters, and the mothers of his children if he is released. They told the judge the jail he was being sent to is dreadful, dirty, inhuman, and an ongoing tragedy.
How's your dad doing? How's your dad doing?
Family members appeal.
Claim that Diddy engaged in illegal operations, such as trafficking individuals for his own gain, using his enormous entertainment business. The entertainment industry was shocked by his arrest, especially after hearing of the government's investigations and the confiscations of his possessions before his incarceration. Diddy is being held in the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, in Brooklyn, the same facility where R. Kelly was previously imprisoned due to serious legal problems with his well-known parties.
This trial is then going to happen in May? It's unlikely, especially if there's a superseding indictment involving minors, because minors present a completely different set of circumstances, because we know through his lawyers, Combs is arguing sexual activity happened but it was consensual. Of course, for sex trafficking, you need one of those three elements: force, fraud, or coercion. Obviously, minors cannot consent to any sexual activity, so that would be a very different defense entirely. The defense would have to be that the activity didn't happen at all and the individuals are lying. So I think that's going to be the potential game changer if we do get the minors wrapped up into a sitting indictment. And we know, at least if you believe the civil attorneys, there are 25 minor victims, one of which is as young as 9.
And those suits haven't been filed yet, but that's what Tony, this Texas attorney, has indicated that we should expect to see in these lawsuits. Elizabeth, I want to go to you. So as our other Elizabeth said, there was nothing about bail. And that's not surprising because that issue of bail has now been appealed to a different court, to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. I was going over the paperwork from Sean Combs' attorneys. We have two questions about that. Number one, from Simply Sarah on YouTube, his lawyer did file bail paperwork. Yes. This is the second question. This is from Simply Sarah. Oh, Simply Sarah had two bail questions. Second one is, was this his last chance for bail? Meaning the paperwork that he just filed.
Yeah, so they filed basically appealing the decision of the two prior judges denying him bail to the Second Circuit. And, technically if they're denied, they do have another higher court, the U.S. Supreme Court, to go to, but I think that's very unlikely. I think this would be the final stop, them appealing to the Second Circuit.
What do you think of his arguments? And let me just lay out what these arguments are. So first they say, we have presented a very attractive bail package. We have put $50 million secured by two properties, 24/7 security monitoring from an outside security firm, no access to phone, no access to internet, visitor logs, whatever other conditions you want to put. And they also said in their paperwork, Sean Combs knew he was under investigation since January. His attorneys immediately reached out to the Southern District of New York, even before there were...
The institution's harsh and inhumane conditions have drawn criticism from a number of advocacy groups. Claims that Diddy is suffering from health issues and severe withdrawal symptoms after the removal of his medications raise questions about his care at this overcrowded facility. Michael Cohen going to prison would be a great shock for someone like Diddy, who is used to living in luxury. After spending a challenging year in federal custody, Donald Trump's personal fixer has discussed the brutal realities of life behind bars.
Janice Combs came from Florida for her son, and that his kids also traveled to be in the same courtroom with him. Combs' attorney, Anthony Rico, sat by his side throughout the proceeding. He's handling the appeal of his bail denial, which is a separate case in the appeals court.
He's making us adjustment. He had his family here today to support him. We really want to put an end to all of the clowning that we see on the internet. This is a serious proceeding with serious consequences.
The judge set a trial date of May 5th, 2025. The lead federal prosecutor took issue with Combs' attorney Mark Agnifillo's extensive comment in a TMZ documentary, alleging the government was guilty of racial bias and targeting Combs. Agnifillo complained about government leaks to the media. The result was a mutual gag order.
I made a request for the judge to issue what we call the gag order, and the judge is going to issue it on a reciprocal basis. I'm not going to say anything that I didn't say in my papers and in court.
Women's rights attorney Gloria Allred represents some of the accusers of Combs in civil cases and spoke outside the court.
It's challenging because for many of them, what they allege he did to them is triggering and traumatizing.
Cohen highlights the enormous distinctions for convicts while describing the harsh reality of prison life. Every prisoner gets a bed with a 1.5-inch mattress and no pillow, a desk, and a plastic chair. Additionally, their personal area is limited to 15 square feet, and their locker is modest. Cohen highlights the atmosphere's melancholy. Diddy was recently seen outside the courtroom, drawing a lot of public interest, according to BBC reporters on the scene. In stark contrast to his usual image as a well-known music tycoon, he was dressed in a tacky jumpsuit with ankle shackles that the prison had provided. An important turning point in the case against him was reached when the court scheduled the trial for May 5.
Your son.
What did you say to him when you visited him in court? Is he doing... How are you feeling today?
In anticipation of a trial that may not begin until the following year, Diddy is now being detained in the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC. Reports indicate that the facility's conditions are appalling, with overcrowding leading to problems like rodents and maggots. Inmates are being relocated as the MCC shuts, and there are speculations that Diddy would soon be transported to a prison in New York. Diddy is expected to appear in court again on December 18, 2024. Following his arrest in September and the severe allegations against him, this date will be crucial as his legal case progresses,